All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Jain Krishna, Senior Fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies, live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us on World Business Watch.
Pleasure.
Of course, what do you expect from the budget?
This is the main budget. The one which happened, on 1st of February was the interim budget. So the unfortunate thing in our country is that good economics still does not make good politics in India. So I definitely expect some corrective steps to be taken for lots of areas where allocations have not been good at all. If India has to meet its aspiration of becoming a developed country by the year 2047. For example, look at healthcare. The public expenditure on healthcare is just about 2% of our GDP. This needs to be doubled. Education and skill development, the allocation is about 3%, which also needs to be doubled. Look at science and technology, research and development kind of an expenditure, which is just about 0.7% of our GDP, which needs to be tripled at least. Our trade to GDP ratio, while it has improved in the recent past, but it is about 47%. Exports form almost 22% of our GDP. So I think all these need to be taken higher and higher. Infrastructure spend, if you look at, while I must appreciate the government, I must commend the government that, they have been increasing the spend level in last several years. It's about 3.4% of the GDP, but that also needs to be in the range of 4 to 5%. And also some capital gains tax rejig is expected. So I know all these changes in terms of directional changes will take its own time. It can't happen in 1 year, but the budget must herald a directional change that, yes, if we have to meet our aspiration to become a developed country by the year 2047, then in these critical areas, the allocations must go up substantially. And, if our human development index has to improve, if our per capita GDP has to improve, I think these are very, very clear expectations, though I do understand that, the dramatic jump can't happen in one budget itself.
Right. Now, sir, just for more clarity on this, compared to February, will we see any big ticket announcement? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah, so February, was before the elections, and typically the budget before the elections is always populist, and a lot of radical reforms are not there. I would definitely expect some big ticket reforms to be announced, because typically if you look at the history of governments in the country, most of the radical and transformative reforms have happened, be it the economic reforms of early 90s or the GST reform in Modi 1.0. All these reforms actually happened in the first few years of the government being formed itself. So I would expect some of the long pending demands, which political parties have been shunning away from, working on that, is the Land Acquisition Act. Land acquisition has become so cumbersome and the prices have become so prohibitive. I think, that needs to be relooked at if we really want to become an alternate manufacturing supply chain destination beyond China. Labor reforms, some reforms did happen in terms of their reclassification and recodification, but let's understand most of the operative level labor laws are of the state government and not the federal government. Their reforms have not happened, and the industry still faces a lot of music. Agro reforms were enacted by the government during COVID, but for political reasons, they had to be repealed. But I still feel in some shape, some form, after due consultation with the farmers, I think some of those measures need to be reintroduced, because that would have been good for the economy and for increasing farmer income at all. MSME reforms, ease of doing business reforms. While it has improved vis-a-vis what it used to be, but it's still at 63. If India is today the 5th largest economy by way of nominal GDP and 3rd largest by PPP, why shouldn't we aspire that our ease of doing business rank shouldn't be in the top 10 nations, if not top 5? So I think these are the kind of big ticket changes which I do expect budget to announce.
All right. So that being said, can the coalition government stick to fiscal discipline?
Well, that's a tricky thing, but if you look at post-COVID, the track record of the government has been good in fiscal prudence, the eventual target being that by the end of the year 24-25, it will be 5.3% of GDP, and by the year 25-26, it will be 4.5% would be the fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP. So I think that same trend should expect, but there are some challenges, like always the demand to spend more on infrastructure, agriculture, rural areas. I think the more you spend, the more your fiscal deficit keeps increasing. Populist measures, which are welfare measures like free food and free ration and things like that. So a lot of these freebies have to be contained, if not eliminated altogether. And let's not forget, it's a coalition government, and it needs support of GDU and Telugu Desam Party. And both Bihar and Andhra would like to extract their pound of flesh and higher allocations or a bigger share in the central schemes. So I think these are the three challenges which have to be looked into, vis-a-vis the need to contain the fiscal deficit. But I do expect, because the same finance minister continues and same government continues, that there'll be there'll be greater discipline to have fiscal prudence and contain the deficit despite these challenges.
All right. Well, Mr. Jain Krishna, thank you so much for joining us on World Business Watch with your insights on this. Always a pleasure to have you with us. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.